All right, the last thing we want to talk about in our immune system is talking about hypersensitivity reactions. So hypersensitivity reactions occur when the immune system overreacts and then causes harm to the body. So things like allergies, receiving incompatible blood type, tissue rejection, autoimmune disease, all of these all of these are the result of a hypersensitivity reaction to the immune system. So, for example, allergies. This is hypersensitivity to allergens, things like pollen, food, or animal hair, which normally would be harmless. An immediate allergic response occurs within seconds of contact with the antigen. This is caused by IgE antibodies attached to receptors on mast cells and basophils, which release histamine when they bind to those allergens. So when pollen is an allergen, histamine stimulates the mucous membrane of the nose and eyes to release fluid. So this is why a pollen allergy frequently results in a runny nose and watery eyes, also known as hay fever. With asthma, airways will constrict as well, resulting in wheezing. Food allergies often cause nausea, vomiting, or diarrhea. Anaphylactic shock is an immediate allergic response. It occurs when the allergen enters the bloodstream, and it's characterized by a sudden and life-threatening drop in blood pressure due to an increased permeability of the capillaries by that histamine. Taking epinephrine can counteract that reaction. A delayed allergic response is going to be initiated by memory T cells at the location of contact with the allergen. So that would be things like poison ivy or mosquito bites. So tissue rejection. Tissue rejection is also an hypersensitivity reaction. It's rejection of transplanted tissue that results because the recipient's immune system recognizes that the transplanted tissue does not belong to itself. Cytotoxic T cells are going to attack that transplanted tissue. Now, this can be controlled with immunosuppressive drugs. The problem with that is that we are intentionally suppressing the immune system. You can also transplant organs that have the same MHC proteins in the donor and the recipient. This is why it's so important to find tissue compatibility when we're looking at organ donations. Another autoimmune disease, another hypersensitivity disorder would be severe combined immunodeficiency disease, or SCIDS. This is caused by both antibody and cell-mediated immunity, or when both antibody and cell-mediated immunity are inadequate or lacking. A very minor infection can ultimately be fatal to the body. Now, this can really only be transplanted with bone marrow transplant or gene therapies. There are also acquired immune deficiencies that can be caused by infections or chemical exposure or radiation. Acquired immunodeficiency syndrome, AIDS, results from infection with the human immunodeficiency virus, or HIV. AIDS patients are going to be much more susceptible to infections, and they have a much higher risk of cancer because their bodies cannot fight off and recognize those cancer cells in early stages. There's also systemic lupus, or erythematosus, or SLE. It's usually going to just be called lupus. This has a variety of symptoms, things like facial rash, fever, joint pain. It's caused by damage to the central nervous system, heart, and kidneys, which can be fatal. This is ultimately going to result in the production of high levels of anti-DNA antibodies. And since all human cells, except for the red blood cells, contain DNA, the symptoms of lupus can be exhibited throughout the whole body. Myasthenia gravis is another autoimmune disease. In this case, the antibodies attach to and interfere with the function of muscles. This can result in severe muscle weakness, eventually resulting in death caused by respiratory failure. Multiple sclerosis is another autoimmune disease. In this case, T cells attack the myelin sheath covering those nerve fibers. If you remember, when we talked about nerve cells and nerve tissue, there's a myelin sheath that insulates and protects those nerve cells. That myelin sheath can be attacked in the case of multiple sclerosis. This is going to cause the central nervous system to dysfunction. It could cause double vision and muscle weakness. Multiple sclerosis may not be an autoimmune disease necessarily because a specific antigen has not yet been identified, but it is caused by the body's own T cells attacking the myelin sheath. Treatments for all of these diseases are drugs designed to decrease the immune response. So ultimately, the only defense we have against hypersensitivity reactions is to suppress the immune system. Obviously, this isn't ideal for long-term treatment or long-term effects because we do have our immune system for a reason. We do need that to fight off any foreign infections. That's why individuals who have autoimmune diseases and disorders are highly susceptible, especially during this time of the pandemic. All of these individuals are going to have a much reduced ability to respond to and fight off the virus itself because their immune system is already weakened and compromised. Rheumatoid arthritis is also an example of an autoimmune disorder. In this case, cytotoxic T cells or antibodies can attack the body's own cells as if they were foreign. It involves both genetic and environmental factors. Sometimes it occurs following an infection. Rheumatic fever, in the case of rheumatic fever, antibodies induced by streptococcal bacterial infection of the throat could also react with heart muscle. So this could ultimately damage the heart muscle and valves. Rheumatoid arthritis is when those same antibodies fight against the joints. So you should be able to define the different types of complications and disorders associated with the functioning of the immune system. You should detail how an antibody works during an allergic reaction. You could also hypothesize, or you should be able to just hypothesize why an autoimmune disorder sometimes develops after an infection.